The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Hello everybody, welcome into another episode of UFC Best Bets. We've got Thanksgiving quickly approaching, but first we've got a UFC Fight Night card featuring Miesha Tate. She continues her comeback tour that she started earlier this year against Brazilian Ketlen Vieira, and we are going to talk about that fight as well as every single fight at UFC Fight Night right here at the Apex in Las Vegas. I am Okamoto here in Vegas, and my partner Ian Parker over there in Florida. Ian, how are you, and what are you thinking about, how excited are you for this main event, seeing Miesha Tate back in action?
Look, I'm a big fan of Miesha, especially the 2.0 version. I think this is a really interesting matchup for her on her way back to a title shot. I'm ready to rock. We need to have a little bit of a comeback from last week, and I believe this is the week we're going to do it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be asking you about that Miesha Tate 2.0 comment because I want to know what you see so different in her from 5 years ago when she was competing at a very, very high level. But let's take a look back at the last weekend's card, UFC Fight Night. Of course, one of the best fights that we've seen in years, potentially. Certainly, another good fight that we saw. There's been a long 3-week stretch of great fights, Ian. We have seen some great action, and if this is an off night for you, I guess I'll take it. You went 2-2 on the best bets, but we are not here to give you even money. We're not here to go 2-2. We want to go 4-0 every week, and I believe that you're going to bounce back strong and get us in the winners column again this week. But we didn't miss the parlay, and we went 2-2 on the best bet. So let's get right into this card. Plenty of stuff to talk about here at UFC Fight Night here in Las Vegas. Let's see. We got a long list of prelims on this card on ESPN Plus, starting off with Luana Pinheiro taking on Sam Hughes. That fight is taking place at strawweight. You also got I'm going to give me a second here on this, Ian. Shailan Nordembaka. That's how you do it. Shailan Nordembaka taking on Shawn Soriano. We know him, a long career so far in the UFC. And then Cody Durden taking on Iori Kilong there at flyweight. So let's get right to it, man. Strawweight fight, Luana Pinheiro taking on Sam Hughes. Luana, it's only her 10th pro fight total, but she already has shown that she belongs in the UFC. She took out Randa Marcos in her last fight. Sam Hughes, 0-2 in the UFC. Her job might be on the line. Does she keep her job with a win over Luana, or are we going with the favorite here?
I think Sam Hughes is in for a long one. You know, we saw her get finished by Tecia Torres, who's not known for really putting it on in that regard. Luana Pinheiro, I think, is a true prospect. I think she's a problem. I think this is someone that is getting better every fight. I do think she wins this one. The odds, as you can see, are very high. So hard to bet that straight. So for us, we're going to dip. We're going to take Pinheiro to win by TKO or KO.
Okay, moving right along to another fight with some kind of high odds. You got Shawn Soriano. He's making his second run here in the UFC. He's 32 years old. He was in the UFC, lost his job, has come back, and is now in that second run. But he started off 0-1 on the comeback, taking on Shailan Nordembaka. He's from China, 0-1 in the UFC. Soriano, again, pretty decent-sized favorite at -280. Which way are we going here?
For me, I think Soriano gets distance. I just think the pressure, the striking, and his overall game here, he's got an opponent that makes sense for the comeback. In his last fight, he had a really tough matchup style-wise. This one really plays into his favor. -280 again, a little too rich for our blood, laying that amount of juice. So for me, if you're going to play him, either parlay, which we'll talk about later, but for now, inside the distance, I think he finishes this one.
Okay, so the prelims open up with two kind of lopsided odds. The rest of them are pretty close, and that starts with the flyweight matchup between Cody Durden, who is 11-3, taking on Iori Kilong. Cody Durden lost to Jimmy Flick in his UFC debut, Jimmy Flick, who is actually now retired, a surprising retirement there. And then Kilong, 0-1 in the UFC, lost to a good flyweight in his UFC debut, Jeff Molina. That was back in April. Which way do you like here?
Well, look, Kilong definitely showed a lot of promise. Jeff Molina, as we've seen, is the real deal as a prospect. But for me, I like what Cody Durden brings to the table. In that fight against Flick, he lost by flying triangle. Otherwise, he was winning that fight against a fellow grappler. Where the advantage is going to be for Durden, or the biggest separation between the two, is the ground game. You know, Kilong's won his fights essentially by TKO or then lost by decision. You know, for Durden, he has that ground game he can rely on here, which I think it would be smart if he goes to the well, because Kilong is not a threat at all off his back. So for me, I think Durden should be a -175, -180, even coming off a loss. There's just too much of a difference on the ground for someone in Durden who has the ability to wrestle.
Wow, okay, so all the way up to -180. Right now he's -155, so some good value there. Ian, let me ask you this. Have you ever been so excited about hitting a bet that you injured yourself while celebrating? Has that ever happened to you?
Transparently, yes, but it was only because the dog ran in the way as I was doing a celebration. You know, it's we saw Conor, you know, kind of pretend. I'm guessing you're referring to something like that. I kind of do that before every single fight that we pick here. You know, for me, I'm always pretending to be on our the pick side. I've gotten into guard. I've had to play defense a few times. One major injury, one minor, but that's something we'll talk about privately.
Yeah, well, no, the reason I bring it up is because Terence McKinney got a sensational 7-second knockout in his UFC debut. And then, of course, he leapt off the cage and injured his knee during the celebration. But here he is back. It must have not been too serious of a knee injury, taking on Firas Ziam. Interesting fight, man. And McKinney, he's got some personality to him, as you know, as you can see with that injury during his celebration. He was noticed the fight odds actually this week, saying, I can't believe that there's even odds with this guy because he doesn't finish anybody. Firas does finish some people, I thought. So, again, even odds on this one. Which way do you like here?
Well, if I do win, I'm way too scared to backflip off a cage regardless. To me, that's insanely risky. So I won't be doing that anytime soon. For me, you know, I get where McKinney's coming from. I think it's not about how fast the knockout was. It was who he beat. You know, his opponent, higher level competition, in my opinion, than what his opponent has fought. This is one I would probably stay away from. You know, the odds are close for a reason. We have seen Firas finish some people. I don't know why McKinney said that. But if I had to bet, if people are really, you know, because it's early in the card, I would lean McKinney. You know, I think this is a kid who he's in the right camp. We've seen that he's got good wrestlers that he trains with, and that overall game is there. We just haven't seen a lot of it yet because it was such a quick knockout. So if you had to go one way, I would lean McKinney. Otherwise, this one's going to be a lot closer than people think, and I think the odds are actually correct despite what Terence believes.
Okay, all right, small lean there on McKinney, but maybe just one where we sit back and take some notes for a future date. Let's move on to a strawweight fight between Loma Lookboonmee and Loopy Godinez, man, which we have talked about Loopy a lot, and that is because she is setting a modern UFC record. This is her third fight in 43 days. She replaces Cheyenne Buys. If you remember, she came in, fought her UFC debut, turned around, fought immediately, and actually went up in weight. She fought at strawweight in her debut, and then immediately turned around and fought at flyweight. And I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, Ian, we had Loopy Godinez in that fight against Luana Carolina, and she fought competitively, but I thought the size made a difference, right? So now she's back here at 115. What are you thinking of this matchup where she is a decent size favorite at -165?
Yeah, the size was the huge favorite. I'm sorry, the huge situation there. You're absolutely correct. It was hard because Loopy is able in her normal weight class to throw people around, wrestle, and against her opponent, she couldn't hip toss, she couldn't judo throw. She was really struggling to get the fight to the floor. When she did great. In this fight against her opponent, she is fighting a very talented striker with good cardio. However, again, just like the Durden fight, the biggest difference here is going to be the grappling, the wrestling, and I think the strength of Loopy in this fight is where it plays. You know, at first I was actually leaning towards Loma because I think her striking could be a little too much. We've seen Loopy get a little aggressive, not throw out a ton of combinations. You know, I think in her last fight, maybe she was just throwing for the home run. She knew she was behind on the scorecards. In this fight, I'm going to go with Loopy here. You know, I like the odds at -165. I think we're being given that because of her recent loss. What the odds makers are really mistaken about in this one, in my opinion, is that there's going to be such a difference in the grappling, and that's where Loopy's going to go in order to get this win. I think she goes to that to get back in the win column, because if you keep taking these short notice fights, exciting as it is, but you're not winning, is the risk really worth the reward? So this matchup plays into her favor.
Yeah, I thought there might be an opportunity for some value on Loopy just because of the fact that you kind of forget that those two fights that were in such quick succession, that they were in different weight classes. And I really did think that she had a chance to win that fight against Luana Carolina, but just simply couldn't get over the size difference. It was pretty apparent when you were watching that fight. Okay, so let's move on to a pretty interesting matchup here at 155. You got Rafa Garcia, who's 12-2. Both of those losses have come in the UFC. He's had kind of a tough he's had some tough matchups, though. I mean, when you're coming into the UFC and your first fight is on short notice against Nasrat Haqparast, that's pretty tough. And he's taken on Natan Levy, who impressed on the Contender Series, but we haven't seen him in over a year. He earned that contract a year ago. He's had some injury problems. It's a very, very close fight. Plus 105 for Levy, minus 125 against with Garcia, who again 0-2 in the UFC, really needs a win here. Does he get it against Natan Levy?
For me, it's way too close to call. There's just a lot of unknowns. Rafa Garcia, in his last 4 fights total, all gone to decision. In his last fight, he was a huge favorite. He lost. So it'd be interesting to see what type of game plan he has for a guy, Natan Levy, who, when we saw in the Contender Series, striking was very crisp, very precise. He wasn't wild. He was very methodical in his game, and his submission game looked really good. However, he's been out for a year. I think he's going to play it a little conservative because Rafa Garcia, with his striking, he doesn't go away. We saw in the Haqparast fight, very, very tough. So for me, it was the distance. I don't feel comfortable betting either side. We haven't seen enough of Levy on the UFC stage, and for Rafa being such a big favorite, then losing, I think both guys, it's going to be a competitive fight. For us, though, we're going to take it as it's going to go all 3 rounds.
Okay, you like that one to go all 3 rounds at minus 175. Let's move on to the feature prelim of the evening on ESPN Plus. It's 145 pounds. You got Pat Sabatini at 15-3. He was supposed to take on Gavin Tucker. Instead, he takes on Tucker Lutz, who comes in with a 12-1 record and has not lost since his pro debut. He's rallied off all 12 of those wins in this current winning streak. So again, pretty close odds here, man. Sabatini minus 135. Tucker coming back at plus 115. How do you like this one to close out the prelims?
Well, look, Sabatini in his last fight was impressive. He fought through adversity. He got dropped. We saw in that fight there was a big difference in the striking. And when the fight went to the ground, it was, I don't remember if it was a heel hook or a leg lock that got it done. That was pretty surprising. I don't think he'll have that same success against a guy in Tucker Lutz. I think Lutz is the better striker. And if the fight does go to the ground, I think Lutz has a pretty solid IQ. I think the only reason why he's an underdog here is due to the replacement. So for me, I actually like the underdog here. I like Tucker Lutz.
Okay, taking a little bit of a dog there in the final prelim. All right, let's move straight on to this main card. There's plenty here to talk about. A lot of interesting names on this main card. Adrian Yanez, I know a lot of people are high on him at bantamweight. He's got a test coming up against Davey Grant. Joanne Wood taking on Talia Santos, another name people are excited about. Ronny Yaya, this guy feels like we've been watching him forever. He's got a competitive bout here. Michael Chiesa, Shawn Brady, man. I think a lot of people have that one circled. Can't miss that one. And then, of course, the main event, Ketlen Vieira versus Miesha Tate. Let's go right to that bantamweight fight, Ian. And again, Adrian Yanez, a lot of people high on this guy, right? And he fought through some adversity, fought somebody who I'm pretty high on, Randy Costa. I thought that was a very fun matchup. Costa was getting the better of him early, but Yanez's power had his say by the end of it. Davey Grant, man, I mean, this guy's been around for a longer time than Yanez. I think that this is a veteran-type test for Yanez. And the odds makers like him to get it done, minus 310. Do you like him to get it done against Davey Grant?
I do, but I don't like it at minus 310. It throws me off sometimes when you have guys on the rise and you're fighting someone in Davey Grant who, look, he fought Chito Vera very well until the end. That first round, I think Grant actually won that round. We've seen Grant surprise people as an underdog. However, where the difference is, I think how much Grant took in that last fight is going to play a part here. I think at some point as a veteran, it seems like he always gets hit. A lot. Very hittable guy. He likes to take one and give one. And against Adrian Yanez, we saw that didn't really work out well for Randy Costa. I don't think that Davey Grant is better than Adrian Yanez anywhere. The only wins, in my opinion, is if he puts Yanez on his back. I don't see it happening. I feel like Yanez did learn from his last fight against Randy Costa. He ate a lot of jabs in that first round, had to come back, get the knockout. I think we're going to see something similar here. This will be his toughest test to date because we know Randy Costa was going to come out. They were going to put on a show. They were going to strike and stand. Grant will look to put Yanez on his back. If he does, we need to see if the prospect in Yanez is true to form. Can he get to his feet and force a stand-up? For me, if you're going to bet this fight, though, you got to go Yanez by TKO or KO. We've seen Grant get dropped a bunch of times, and Yanez has the power to do it.
Okay, moving on to a very kind of similar situation here. You got Talia Santos, who a lot of people are extremely high on. She's 28 years old, 18-1. Not a huge finisher. She hasn't stopped a fight since 2016, but she has looked very impressive thus far in the octagon. Taking on JoJo Wood, not Calderwood anymore. Congratulations to her on getting married to her coach, John Wood, here in Las Vegas. She's kind of settled into this weird period where she's alternating wins and losses. She's alternating wins and losses in her last 6. She's a veteran in the game, coming in as a big underdog here against Santos, who is minus 360. Is the betting community too high on Santos? Is this an opportunity to take some money on JoJo?
You know what? I think matchup for JoJo here. You know, JoJo likes to stand on her feet. However, she is very hesitant. She takes a lot of shots. It takes her a little while to get ready. And Talia Santos, I think, is going to be the better striker. She can put JoJo on her back. JoJo's jiu-jitsu skills off her back are pretty solid, but I don't see her being a threat to where she submits Talia Santos. And Brett, you beat me to the punch. You hit it right on the head, my man. She is a decision. She wins a lot of fights by decision, Talia Santos. Before the UFC, she was finishing people. JoJo has never been knocked out. I don't think that happens now. So for us, in order to get these odds to make this something bettable, we're going to go Talia Santos by decision.
Okay, you still got to pay a little bit of a price there for Santos by decision, but hey, that's what she's doing so far in the UFC. We'll see if she continues to do it against JoJo. So that'll wrap up everything for your parlay, if I'm correct, right? Ian, why don't you go ahead and give us the parlay that we're going with this weekend here at UFC Fight Night.
We're going to go Pinheiro, we're going to go Soriano, Yanez, and then we're going to finish with Santos. You know, we're going to get plus 180 and change on this on the heavier favorites. The reason why we're doing this is it's so hard to stay away from these fighters. If you're very confident in these favorites winning, although obviously we've seen it, parlays get busted, it does happen, but that's when you have minimal risk. Instead of laying out minus 300 to win 100, you get to bet a lot less, you can win more. Now we're in plus money. So even if we do lose this, which I don't think we're going to this week, I'm very confident in this parlay. Again, minimal damage, and then we move on to our best bets.
All right, plus 188 there on the parlay. We're taking 4 different favorites there. And yes, let's move on to the rest of the main card. We got 3 fights to go. We'll start at 135 with Ronny Yaya. Been seeing this guy forever, and quietly he is 4-1-1 in his last 6. About as quiet as you could ever be, 4-1-1 in your last 6. No one really talking about this guy, but we know what he brings to the table, man. This guy is a winner. He's proven that over and over again, taking on Kyung Ho Kong, a big guy for the division. He's on a 3-fight win streak. And we got even odds. I love these. I love when you got even odds there, right there on the main card. Yaya minus 110, Kang minus 110. What do you got on this one?
Yeah, really, it's amazing. I feel like I've been watching him since UFC started. It's unbelievable. To your point, man, he quietly wins. He really does. And what I've noticed in his last few fights, although he's not the most active fighter, his striking is starting to become a threat. He's got power. He's not throwing wild, although he's a submission guy. We know what he's doing. We know he's setting it up to get the fight to the ground. But people are now so concerned about getting taken down that his striking is doing damage. I think against a guy in Kang, they both are submission guys. In that situation, I lean Yaya. I think the reason why the odds are almost even is because of the lack of activity. But Kang also, I believe, hasn't fought since pre-COVID. So for me, I like Ronny Yaya here.
All right, moving on to the co-main event, and this is one that I think a lot of people are excited to hear you break down, of course. It's Michael Chiesa versus Shawn Brady. Big-time matchup. Shawn Brady, another guy that it's kind of the theme of this main card, right? Some of these young guys, these guys with great records, facing someone who is very well established, and Shawn Brady is that. He's 14-0, fighting out of Philadelphia. He's been extremely, extremely impressive thus far, taking on his toughest test to date, unquestionably, in Michael Chiesa. Of course, Chiesa coming off a disappointing performance. He said it was a mental issue. He said he's up for this fight. He wants to prove he's still the guy. He knows how high everybody is on Shawn Brady. Chiesa actually a little bit of an underdog here, plus 135, plus 145 actually it's moved now. What do you think about this matchup? Does Shawn Brady get it done and continue this train into the top 10?
So I'm high on Shawn Brady as a prospect. However, these odds should be completely flip-flopped. They're definitely wrong in my opinion. Shawn Brady has not fought anybody in the top 10, other than Dan Ige, in which he got knocked out pretty quick. So it's hard to really say, oh, he should be a favorite over Michael Chiesa. Chiesa 3-0 in welterweight until he made one mistake against Vicente Luque. He was winning that fight. He did exactly what he wanted to do, get the fight to the floor, get a potential submission. He slipped, like you said, had a mental error, and unfortunately he lost that fight. But to me, that does not mean that he should all of a sudden be an underdog. He's fought the higher level competition his entire career. For me, I haven't seen enough out of Brady against higher level competition to feel comfortable laying money against a guy in Chiesa who knows exactly who he is. Do I think Brady is the better striker here? No doubt in my mind. However, Chiesa has fought almost everybody is a better striker than him. And what does he do? He's going to get close to you. He's going to close the distance. He's going to get you against the cage and eventually take you down. I think between the two, I favor Chiesa in the grappling. I think he's a very high-level IQ fighter in that regard. He's not going to throw spinning stuff. He's not going to try something new to try and be fancy and prove to everybody that he's Michael Chiesa 4.0. He's going to go in there. He's going to bull rush and take this fight to the ground. And that's what he needs to do to win. For me, the value is going to be on Chiesa. But the one bet that I really, really like here is that the fight goes over 2.5 rounds. Chiesa wins most of his fights by decision. And Brady's, I believe, last few fights have gone over 2.5 rounds. So whoever wins this fight, I believe it goes to that time mark. But again, underdog-wise, I like Chiesa here.
All right, we like the dog in the co-main event. I like it. Michael Chiesa taking on Shawn Brady. Real quick though, Ian, does it give you any pause that the line is moving the opposite direction? When you have a strong play, which it sounds like you're pretty strong on this one, and you see the line moving the other way, does it give you any pause like maybe you're missing something, or is this the public real big on Shawn Brady and low on Chiesa after he lost his last fight?
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, the number I think actually started originally earlier in the week at plus 155 or 160 for Chiesa, so it's been going up and down. Look, when you get guys, they're going to look – people are looking at the striking, in my opinion here, which is going to be the big difference. But for me, Chiesa is not someone that's really had to stand up for 3 rounds and box in any of his fights. So, you know, again, this is where we come into play where we try to educate and help people out. If people want to bet on Shawn Brady, I understand. He's very well-rounded. You don't want to judge him based on his last fight getting knocked out with essentially 1 punch. But it's the same thing for Chiesa. Chiesa was winning against Luque, made 1 mistake, and he paid for it. But throughout his entire career, this is just somebody that has stuck to his guns. He knows exactly who he is. And between the two, I believe Chiesa is the better grappler. And I think this fight will hit the floor early on.
All right, without further ado, let's go on to the main event. As mentioned before, it is Miesha Tate taking on Ketlen Vieira. And Miesha Tate, these odds go back quite a ways because she took 5 years off right there in between the Renault and the Pennington fight. But she is loved by the fan base and loved by the odds makers, really. I mean, this woman has been a favorite usually in the majority of her bouts, including, look at that, minus 260 against Amanda Nunes back in 2016. If only we could go back to 2016 and lay some large money on Amanda Nunes as a plus challenger against Miesha Tate. But we do have an opportunity to bet Miesha Tate's fight this weekend. And which way are we going to go? She is the underdog in this one. Vieira right now at minus 120.
Where's Marty McFly when you need him with that almanac, right? That would have been fantastic to cash in on there with Amanda Nunes. You know what? For me, this is a really stylistically, this is a terrible fight in my opinion for Vieira. Reason being is that if you look at her losses, Irene Aldana, she got outstruck pretty bad in that fight. She got knocked out. Against Yana Kunitskaya, that's where I'm going to compare it to Miesha here. Yana's striking is okay, but her clinch game, her wrestling, and her cardio, very good. Someone like Miesha Tate, before she came back, really used her overhand right to set up her wrestling. It was a little predictable. She got in a lot of brawls, and that was just the type of fighter she was. In her last fight against Marion Renaud, we saw a much different fighter. We saw composure, we saw confidence, we saw very technical boxing, and when the wrestling was there, she was able to get it with ease because the boxing was really impactful here. And on top of that, the big difference between the two is going to be the cardio. Ketlen Vieira tends to fade as the fight goes on. Miesha gets better, stronger, faster, and the only reason why Miesha, in my opinion, is an underdog here is because the lack of activity, becoming a mother. And in her last fight, Marion Renaud, not necessarily a top 5 fighter, but for me, it was just seeing how Miesha would approach that fight. And again, Marion Renaud is a very good striker. Miesha outstruck her, brought the fight to the ground. I think between the two, Ketlen Vieira has to land hard and early and make this a dogfight. And I think Miesha has just really matured over the years, taken her time, got the passion back, and she's going here to win. She's got one goal in mind to get to the belt. She's not saying no to any contenders that are put in front of her. And you know, Vieira is a very strong athlete. I think Miesha's IQ, though, is where it comes into play. Plus 100, Miesha 2.0.
All right, real quick, Ian. I mean, obviously, we're going through all of these plays, and you're giving out a lot of different plays, and you have varying degrees of confidence in all of them. How confident are you in Miesha Tate? How much do you love this bet in the main event?
I really, really, really strongly like this bet on Miesha Tate. I don't think there's too many women in the division who beat a mentally strong Miesha. You know, in her last few fights prior to she even said she just didn't have it anymore. And in this sport, you can't continue if mentally you're not there. That's when you get hurt. That's when, you know, your status tends to drop, your stock falls a little bit, and she was losing to people that I don't think at her best she would lose to even remotely close. So to see Miesha so mentally focused and wanting to be here, this is where we take advantage of this line, because after this, we're not going to get Miesha at an underdog situation until she fights for the belt.
All right, well, listening to you say that, it sounds like Miesha might be one of your best bets, but let's find out officially right now. What are your best bets for UFC Fight Night on Saturday?
And here we go. Cody Durden, again, the wrestling is where he has to lean on. Both guys have knockout power. However, the biggest difference on the ground, I like him at minus 155. Talia Santos, too big of a favorite to bet her straight. However, I believe she's just going to be too much of an athlete for JoJo Wood. We're going to shrink that down to size at minus 150 by decision. Chiesa and Brady. Again, I do like Chiesa as an underdog, but I am way more comfortable betting over 2.5 rounds based on the way both guys win. And last but not least, Brett, you are correct. Miesha Tate, plus 100. She is going to round out our best bets.
I love it. Back-to-back weeks where you've had a best bet in the main event. Okay, so real quickly, here in Las Vegas, this is not the only fight card going on. You got Terence Crawford taking on Shawn Porter down the road at Mandalay Bay on the Las Vegas Strip. Let's touch on that real quickly. Crawford is a massive favorite here against Shawn Porter. You betting this fight, Ian? And if you are, which way are you going?
I'm going to go with Crawford. I think Crawford wins here. Too big of a favorite to bet straight. I think he wins by decision. I just think that even though he's gone 5-0 in his last 5 fights by TKO or KO, you got a guy in Porter who is just levels above any of the opponents he's fought. He's got a very pressuring type of style that might confuse Crawford in the beginning. However, I think Crawford is just too fast, too strong, the better athlete, and he gets it done. I'm going to give Porter credit as an opponent here, but Crawford by decision.
All right, Crawford by decision in the top-ranked boxing match down at Mandalay Bay. That is it for us with Ian Parker, myself, Brett Okamoto. We have gone through all the prelims. We've gotten Ian's best bets. We've got his parlay. Hopefully we win you some cash this weekend, and hopefully you enjoy the fights at UFC Fight Night. And then, of course, again, Shawn Porter trying to pull the upset against Terence Crawford. Should be a fun weekend of fights. So take care, enjoy them, enjoy Thanksgiving, and we will see you in December for another UFC Fight Night. Take care until then.